everybody, Shalthis here. I wanted to do a new Rocket vlog and talk about a particular subject that I get asked about a lot. Every time I do an EU power ranking show, this question seems to come up, so I wanted to make this video to hopefully at least answer this question once and for all, for now, as best I can. Now, the question I keep getting asked is, where do I see the future of Rocket League esports going? And it's a difficult question to I mean, I know where I want it to go, but as far as where I see it going, it's not really for me to say. That entirely depends on one party, and it's a party that we know now is making moves. And of course, that is Psyonix. So the reason I wanted to talk about this is I've been spending a lot of time looking at the greater world of esports. You know, not just Rocket League, but everything else that goes into it. We know about the big names in esports. We know about CSGO and League of Legends and Smite and StarCraft and all these big major games that have huge prize pools, you know, big tournaments, stadium shows, things like that. Obviously, as somebody who's deeply involved with Rocket League, that's where I'd love to see it go. Now, the reason that those games, and even some of the smaller ones, things like the Gears of War scene, Vainglory, which is a mobile MOBA app, a mobile, like a cell phone, you know, a cell phone mobile app. Games like that, like, you know, Smite is actually a pretty good example. And World of Tanks, you know, all these games that have esport fun. Guild Wars 2 has an ESL Pro League. So these are a bunch of games that have smaller competitive aspects, like as far as smaller scenes than things like CSGO and Dota and League of Legends and all that. But they still have a following. So what's the big differentiating factor? Why is Rocket League, which is such a well-crafted esport game, like I've said it before a million times, Rocket League is the type of game that is the perfect fit for esports. It's easy to watch, it's easy to understand, it's got a lot of big, exciting things to look at, and it's very interesting and deep. You know, it's easy to understand, but it takes a while to really master. So it's a perfect fit for an esport, you know, and it's something that everybody can watch. Kids of any age. There's no death. There's no guns, there's no violence, it's just cars. Sometimes they blow up, but nobody dies. You know, there's no blood or anything like that. It's the perfect fit for an esport that anybody can watch. So why isn't it more successful now? Why has it been exclusively community driven? And that's really the problem, is up until recently, Psyonix has been very hands-off when it comes to Rocket League esports. The fact that they've hired somebody to handle their esports business, and the fact that they're clearly making steps in that direction, is the deciding factor as for where Rocket League goes. Now, Rocket League will, until that happens, remain a small, niche esport for only a few people to enjoy. You know, we're talking about maybe a few thousand as far as an esport. On a major event, you know, I think Rocket Royale peaked at about 4K or so. Drew in about 16,000 people who tuned in overall, which is great. But it's certainly not at the level of major games. And it's not getting the attention of real sponsors. So why is that? And again, it's because Psyonix. Until that time comes where Psyonix officially makes their move into esports with Rocket League, I don't know where this is going to go. But that's going to be the big tilt factor, and that's why I think 2016 is going to be the defining year for Rocket League esports. It's either going to work or it's going to fail. One of those two things is going to happen in 2016, and we're going to know, because Psyonix is going to make their move. They're going to announce who they're partnering with and what they're doing, which means we're probably going to get at least one LAN event out of this. But if it's not successful, if it doesn't capture an audience, for one, I will be extremely surprised. And for two, then we know what the ultimate end game is for Rocket League. It's going to continue to be community driven and hopefully still have Psyonix involvement, but it's not going to be the major esport that I think it can be. So to definitively answer that question, we have to know what Psyonix is going to do first. When they make their move, then we'll know what the future of Rocket League esports is going to be like. Because we need to see what a properly funded and properly promoted event can do. And I'm talking about... So, on that subject, let me talk about what I think is going to happen with Rocket League as far as esports goes. We know right now that we are waiting on who exactly Psyonix is going to be partnering with. I've made my guess, my educated guess, that it's going to be ESL. For the obvious reasons that it is the largest international esports organization, they already have an existing relationship, and they have the infrastructure and legal protection to support Psyonix's first move into esports. So, with that in mind, Psyonix makes their move. They partner with ESL. They create, maybe it's an ESL Pro League for Rocket League, or maybe it's just a big event, a big online event, whatever they do. And then it comes down to what kind of efforts do they make in terms of publicity, prize pool, team involvement, community involvement, and then, ultimately, what kind of crowd do they draw? I certainly think they need to draw enough viewers that it is sufficient for what they want to do. Like, the biggest Rocket League tournament to date, interestingly enough, was a non-pro player $5,000 Geico Invitational tournament for a lot of famous streamers and such that ESL held. And that tournament had about... it did pretty well. It was drawing around 12,000 viewers, concurrent. I don't know what the ultimate viewership was for that. I can certainly say it was probably in the 6 digits. But it drew a lot of numbers because of the name power of the streamers involved. There was very little publicity, though. As somebody who was deep in the Rocket League esports scene, the fact that I didn't really know about this until the last moment was surprising. But that's where the fault lies. Now, this, of course, wasn't a big pro event, wasn't a competitive event, it was just a charity tournament. But it had a big sponsor on it. And it was an indication that there was some viewership there and some drawing power there. So there's two figures that a sponsor is going to look at when it comes to streaming and getting their brand out to a tournament. And that's going to be the concurrent viewership, which tells how big of an audience this is drawing consistently, and then the total views, which means how many people actually tuned in at one point or another to watch the event. That's like what I said. As far as Rocket Royale went, there was a 3,500, 4,000 concurrent day with a 16,000 viewer view, which means at least 16,000 people or so ultimately tuned in for some point of that tournament. And that means that for whatever duration of time, their brand was exposed to that person. So let's say you're Geico, and you want to promote a tournament. If you've done it before and had, 100,000 views, that's probably a fairly low estimate, but I'm just going to use it anyway. Say 100,000 views. That means that your brand reached 100,000 people, depending on how the tournament presents itself. But that's a rough idea of what it was presented to. So that's the factor here. That is the sort of thing that sponsors are going to look at. And sponsor involvement is key, Psyonix involvement is key, and taking it to the next level is key. And the only entity that can do that is Psyonix, or somebody with a big wallet and big dreams for Rocket League esports. One of those two things has to happen to really elevate this. So I hope that answers the question. I hope that explains what we're looking for and what sponsors want and what we really need to see. Because even with an esport the size of Vainglory, which again is just a mobile MOBA application that has a fairly sizable esport following, that works because it's officially endorsed. Smite works because it's officially endorsed. Blizzard's tournament works because it's officially endorsed. That's how it works. You know, if a sponsor's looking at Rocket League, their first question, in my opinion, is probably going to be, how come the publisher isn't involved in these tournaments? Where are they? And that's a big question to ask. Well, that's going to do it for today's Rocket vlog. I will be back some point in the future to talk more. But if you have any subjects that you would like me to address at length on a future Rocket vlog, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Hit me on Twitter, @Shalthis, or wherever else you find me. Works that way. Anyway, thanks all for watching. I'm going to see you next time.